All right. Well, I'm noticing it's 8:30, so I know a lot of people have other places to be after this is concluded. So I want to respect everyone's time, and I think we'll begin this town hall. But really briefly, I just want to introduce myself in case you don't know me. My name is Ryan Karl, and I was lucky enough to be elected president of the Graduate Student Union for the current academic year, and I'm very pleased and privileged to be joined by a number of administrators of the University of Notre Dame that have made time out of their busy schedule with kind of navigating COVID-19 to help answer some questions graduate students have. So I will introduce them briefly, and then we will dive into the questions because we actually have quite a few questions. But I just want to tell everybody thank you very much for joining us, and I hope all of you are staying healthy and safe during these unusual times. But so we are joined tonight by Lynn Miranda, who is the Charles and
Hey,
Jill
everyone.
Fischer Provost. Thank you very much for joining. We also have Dean Laura Carlson, who's the Vice President, Associate Provost, and Dean of the Graduate School. Thank you very much for coming. And we also have Michael Seamon, who is the Vice President for Campus Safety and University Operations. So we kind of have a who's who of Notre Dame here tonight to help answer everyone's questions. So thank you very much again for joining us, and we will jump into the question and answer segment. And if there's time remaining, we will have a live question period if we are able to fit that into our hour. So let me ask
Ryan, before you get started, do you think
Sure.
that, I know you had said earlier that there were a bunch of people in the queue and you let them in and then they disappeared. Do you think those people are back on the call right now, or do you think we've lost some people?
I actually think everybody who was in the queue I added, and I don't see anybody in the queue right now. So I think we're safe. But in the event anybody shows up, I'll definitely jump and add them in. But good question.
Okay.
All righty. So here we go. Question number one. All right. So the first question is as follows. How is the university taking steps to enforce the campus compact, specifically sending representatives to locations in South Bend frequented by ND students?
So we asked Mike to handle this question.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's a common one. We're hearing that a lot, right? So a couple weeks ago, when we heard about the evening at a couple bars at Finney's and then Monterey Mexican restaurant, bar and grill, people have asked us. So I think the best way to say it is it's a comprehensive approach of just communicating with our partners. So certainly we're talking with Dr. Mark Fox at the County Health Department, and I know they're very interested in this, right? Because it's much more than just Notre Dame. It's a community health standard. So we're talking with the County Health Department. With a couple instances, we'll talk with the police departments like Mishawaka Police Department or the Excise State Police. So a lot of people just want to know what's going on, and we're communicative with them. We have a lot of students who also give information provided to the Office of Community Standards or Student Affairs, so they provide information, and if that's actionable, we'll act on that. So what we're trying to do is tie in a lot of different people, because this is a community effort. This is not just a Notre Dame effort, to hold people accountable. And I think, Ryan, the one thing that you'll hear us say on campus, off campus, wherever, it's not what you're doing when people are watching, it's what you're doing when people aren't watching. And are you doing the right things? Are you doing the right health and safety standards to keep yourself safe, your friends safe, and your colleagues safe? So I'm grateful that so many people are interested in this, and it's on everyone's radar. So we'll continue to look as we go forward.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. I think that was a perfect, very comprehensive answer. And I think with that, we'll move on. So thank you. Okay. Our next question is a little bit longer, but bear with me. So here it goes. Could you go through the data for how you know there isn't transmission in the classroom? For example, if two students who are friends and hang out outside of class also take a course together and they give each other COVID, how do you know the transmission happened outside the classroom?
So first of all, we don't. So we don't know that. So we can never say definitively there is no classroom-based transmission. All we can say is we don't have evidence of classroom transmission. So we can't prove that negative, and I've always been very careful about that language. So in cases where there are two students in the same class who both end up with COVID, we actually go pretty hard after the, I mean, we always take the contact tracing very seriously, but we work really, we kind of double down when you have 2 students in the same class, because, we're very worried about making sure that classrooms remain safe. So when we have the conversations with the students, we figure out, like, so when you were interacting, hey, I saw a little someone there. When they're interacting with each other, okay, aside from being in the classroom, do you spend other time together? Do you have meals together? When you've done that, were you wearing your mask or were you not wearing your mask? So, and we haven't, so we've been typically able to find the cluster where there has been, a meal shared or something like that, which would be a more likely source of transmission than sitting in a classroom 6 feet apart wearing a mask. In addition, when 2 people in the same class are diagnosed positive, then we go and look at all the other students in the class and look at the seating chart in the class and make sure that, and check all of their surveillance testing and all of their diagnostic testing if they happen to show up there. So there's a lot of different avenues that we go down, and I care deeply about the safety of our classroom. I think I think Mike Seamon and I have spent hundreds, maybe even a couple thousand hours thinking about it, working on it, and all of that. So so we go down a lot of paths, and my approach in my research when we think we found something and we want to publish it is we try to prove ourselves wrong. And if we can't prove ourselves wrong, then we're like, okay, we're ready to write this up. So I'm always, probably to the great annoyance of my colleagues, I'm always trying to prove us wrong. Like, is this a sign of classroom transmission? Is that a sign of classroom transmission? And we just have not been able to find any evidence of transmission. So
Thank you very much for that. Again, a very comprehensive answer. Yeah, I think a lot of people will be really comforted to hear about all the thought that's gone into all the communications sent out. So thank you. All right, moving on. Another question. Okay. Next question is, what is being done to support graduate students disproportionately impacted by the pandemic? How should hardships be documented by departments?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I'll take this answer. So we certainly understand that everybody is working really, really hard, and we all agree that we have the same goal, and that is for all students to make progress on their degree, to graduate and go out and change the world. So this pandemic has been particularly hard on some departments and some programs. Think of folks who have to travel for their research, for example, human subjects research, those kinds of things. That's in my home department. So we completely understand that that normal progress to degree has been interrupted. So we have a model in place that we call the Cascade Model that starts locally and then broadens out. So by local, I mean the best person for you to talk to if you feel like your work has been impacted and has slowed down your progress to degree is talk to your faculty mentor first and document what the problems have been and where you're being challenged and what kinds of things that you feel like you need. You need an extra summer, do you need an extra semester, those kinds of things. That will spur a conversation with your director of graduate studies. Same kind of conversation to make sure. And then all along the way, we're going to figure out if you need what additional support you need. And the mentor will be able to provide what he or she can. The program will be able to provide what they can. The college will provide what they can. We have a grad continuity fund in the graduate school to help support, and the provost office is a last stop to help support. So the most important thing you can be doing right now is documenting. Well, you can say hi to my dog, but you can also document what your hardships are now and keep track and let people know if you're struggling so we can try to anticipate how we might help you.
All right, thank you so much. I think it's really exciting to hear that there's so many avenues for support if you need it in the graduate school and elsewhere in the university. So thank you for sharing. Okay, moving on to the next question. Okay, Under what circumstances are graduate students being informed that they could have been exposed by an undergraduate student in their classroom or lab?
That's a great question. I'll take a crack at it, and Marilyn certainly jump in if I miss anything. The good news is graduate students would be notified the same way any faculty member, any staff member. As Marilyn said earlier, when someone tests positive, if an undergraduate student tests positive, we're looking at every element of his or her life, meaning like class schedule, dorm, residence, you name it. So if someone's in a lab or a classroom, we're going to run through the contact tracing process and find out who are these persons associated with, because that's what we're incentivized. I mean, we want to control the spread of that, right? And everybody's health and safety is paramount. That's where we start. That's the basis. So we'll use class schedules, use contact tracing, and I just want to throw a quick shout out to the contact tracing team. What a dedicated group of men and women who, many of them have come from different departments, have been trained for this. A lot of them are healthcare professionals, RNs, that we have had with us since July, and they're working hours, and every conversation they have with anybody is confidential, right? And so they just want to get to the truth of what your interactions were or are with different people. And Marilyn hit on some of them earlier. Were you eating with someone? Were you in a car unmasked with someone? Were you next to someone for an extended period of time? So that just gives a little context behind what we're doing, but we would treat the grad students just like we would any other faculty member or staff member, and let you know if someone was in there and we felt, and the contact tracers felt that there was risk, we're more incentivized to let more people know than less. So I don't know, Marilyn, if I've missed anything or you want to add anything on that, but.
Nope. Nice.
Okay, great. Yeah, I also agree. I've heard nothing but great things from everybody about the contact tracing team, but thank you very much for finding that information to everyone. All right, so moving on to the next question here. Okay, the next question. Why can't graduate students get a surveillance test every week like undergraduates?
So we have our saliva-based lab, and we supplement our saliva-based lab with some additional nasal swabs. And we came up with the absolute maximum number of surveillance tests we could do in a week and spread that out over days. And it requires us to run multiple shifts in the lab and all that type of stuff. So once we figured out what the maximum number of tests we could do in a week were, we then started looking at, okay, if we wanted to test all of the undergraduates once a week, or if we wanted to test all of the students once a week, would that be possible? So we would love to test all students once a week. That's not possible. So given what the constraints on our lab are, so then you start bringing in information on where the relative risk is. And because the relative risk has been so low amongst our graduate students, and here I'm talking about our doctoral students, our professional students are tested once a week. We offer testing to them every other week. Now, if anyone thinks that they've been exposed to someone who has COVID, in their daily health check, they can always indicate that they believe that they've been exposed. And that's a way to, if you truly believe that, we always hope that people are answering their daily health check honestly. That's another way where we would bring some additional people in for surveillance testing. So we are continuing to see very, very low positivity rates amongst graduate students. We're grateful to the graduate students for what must be their very careful adherence to the protocols. And this is, another, when Mike was talking about, how would a student know if they were exposed? Well, you'd learn through contact tracing. And one of the things about the cadence of our surveillance testing is we should be able to, if it turned out that you were exposed, we should be able to pick people up in surveillance testing.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that'll ease a lot of people's minds. So thank you very much for sharing. All right, I think we will move on to the next question here. All right, here we go. Okay, here it is. Is it possible to provide more ND monitored social events on campus to provide a safe outlet for students to de-stress? The current anonymous reporting mechanism negatively impacts student planned events, and there are few alternatives.
Yeah, so I'll take that. Thanks. Thank goodness we were talking before the town hall started that it was March now, and with March comes some decent weather. And so you will start seeing a lot of activity on campus because I think the intuition behind this comment is exactly right. We want to keep students engaged on campus as much as we can with fun activities to de-stress for their mental health and all of that. So Student Affairs and the Student Activities Office have been working really hard. They have events and things planned Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights from here through the rest of the semester. So I can just give you a sense of what they're doing. So Thursday is trivia night. They're going to have a Disney karaoke between Duncan and DeBartolo on Friday with food trucks, Harry Potter night in the stadium, shuffleboard on ice at the Morris Inn, which is nightly through Sunday. You may have seen the chairs and the fire pits that have started appearing now right outside of the lodges, and the quad lodges will be open for games. So there'll be sort of a suite of things every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from here on out. And then you may have be aware of the Harvest Festival that they had in the fall, which was really well received by students. And so there are plans underway for 3 campus-wide festivals. One is on St. Patrick's Day called the Luck of the Irish Festival on that Wednesday. So that'll be a traditional feast in the dining halls with programming that includes Irish dance show, video, Irish trivia, game show night, and so on. And then on April 10th and on May 8th, they're planning 2 additional kind of campus-wide festivals. So I feel like you'll start seeing more things now that we can get outside and really sort of embrace spring in South Bend.
All right, wow, I'm super excited for March now after hearing about all the exciting things coming. I don't know how I'm gonna be a good grad student with all the fun things to distract me. So thank you for all that exciting things to look forward to. All right, I think we'll move on to the next question here. All right, okay. Are off-campus graduate students subject to the same contact tracing policies, i.e. day 0 of quarantine set as day a roommate receives a positive result versus last day of contact with roommate before testing as undergraduate and on-campus students? If so, why do the guidelines not reflect the differences in our living situations?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at it. That's a great question. Whoever submitted that one. So let's talk day 0. That's what I'm hearing on contact tracing. So again, it's the same standard, not only undergrad, but grad, faculty, staff member. These are the same questions we would be asking anybody from the wellness center who would be reaching out to a faculty staff member if someone had turned positive. If you take the 48 hours prior to the test of the person who ends up being sick, let's say Ryan, you and I are roommates, and I don't feel well, and I know I don't feel well, and I'm going to go in and get a test, and I turn positive from that. The contact tracers will look at the 48 hours up into that test. What was the last contact that you and I had, that we had seen each other? Now, if it was outside that 48 hours, you would not be affected, right? Because you weren't around me during my most infectious period of time. I think the one nuance is, let's say I went and did a surveillance test. I'm asymptomatic, I feel fine, but I'm going to do my surveillance test. And I spit, and then the next morning I find the results that I'm positive. Well, you and I might see each other that morning if we're driving into campus together or spending time before I get my results. So basically it's the last contact within the 48 hours of becoming positive. So same concept for everybody, to be honest. It's hard to, if you're living with somebody, regardless of the bedroom or bathroom or kitchen or living area situations, it's just by nature of the virus, you're living in the same house, unmasked, most likely. So It's tough, but it's the same. I'm proud to say it's the same standard across everything. So again, kudos to the contact tracers too. Every case is unique. Every positive case is unique. And it's up to them to unpack that and just find out what happened to protect you and your fellow students and the undergrads that you may be teaching or working with, and your family and friends. So great question.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to hear about all the thought that went into all the policies and procedures about COVID-19 and contact tracing. So thank you very much for sharing all that. I'm sure there were a lot of long nights spent figuring all that out. So thanks again.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question here. It's a little bit longer, so again, please bear with me. Let me clear my throat before I dive in. Okay. Can students be permitted access to refrigerators and microwaves on campus? Many graduate and professional students commute to school and spend the majority of the day on campus. Normally, we would bring perishable food or food that is better enjoyed heated with us for the day. However, access to refrigerators and microwaves have been restricted due to COVID safety protocols. Shared printers have similar buttons and handles, but students are still allowed to use those. Additionally, it is our understanding that staff and faculty have access to refrigerators as well. Okay, I made it through. Okay.
Okay, Ryan, I'll take that. I really appreciate this question. I'm so happy that people ask if they're not sure about something, because in this case, the answer is that microwaves and fridges are not expected to be offline. So I imagine we're talking in this scenario about shared kitchen spaces, and maybe it's in McCourtney in a lab or in a departmental office if there's a refrigerator and microwave that's used. And it was not an intention that it would be taken offline. So I'll read the guidance that was offered in the university playbook around this, just to make sure that you know they still need to be cleaned. So you are encouraged to wipe down commonly used surfaces in personal and shared spaces, such as keypads, coffee makers, printers, door handles, frequently used cabinets and drawers, microwave buttons, handles, refrigerator handles, shared coffee pots, etc. And I'll add that I would encourage you to clean before you use these things, and then also after you use these things, just as a common good approach. So please know that you should be able to use those. I don't know if Mike, you have anything you want to add?
No, I think you hit it right on the head, Laura. It's clean the surfaces before and after, clean your hands before and after, and there should be no problem with stuff like that. So that's a great question. I'm glad somebody brought that up, because you should be able to use microwaves and refrigerators. So please do so, but just do so safely, I guess is what we're asking everybody to do.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that'll be really great news for a lot of people that maybe didn't know the policy. So I'm really happy we got to clear that up. So thanks again. Okay, let's see. Moving on to the next question. Okay. Graduate and professional student dining hall rates are difficult for most to afford, and there are few avenues where students can have access to hot food on campus during the winter months. In the long term, would it be possible to have dining hall rates that are more in line with ND staff rates?
Yeah, I'll take that one too, Ryan. So this came up a couple weeks ago, and I've been working with Mickey Kidder, and she heads up University Enterprises, which includes dining, and she's completely sensitive to this issue. And so they have developed some value pack dining hall meals that graduate students can purchase. So a value of 5 meals, 10, 15, or 20. The price per meal ends up being between $7 or $8 a meal, which I think is more affordable than what it is now. And this, I think, is in line with the faculty and staff meal plans. So we're working right now with Mimi Beck on communication about that. So more information will be coming out very soon. In the meantime, though, if you have a question about it, just reach out to dining@nd.edu.
All right, that's great.
So, yeah, so there's good news here too.
Yeah, that's really great news. I've been in the dining hall more than once, and I can tell you that every time I've been amazed at the quality of the food. So that's really exciting. Now I can go even more. So I'm really excited to hear that. All right. All right. Oh, I'm just daydreaming about the Southwest salad. All right. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. All right. I don't wanna go off the rails. Okay. Okay. Next question here. Given that the majority of positive COVID tests have come from asymptomatic testing, what is the university doing to ensure that some of these cases are not false positives?
I'll talk about that, and then I'm sure Mike can add some things. This is like right up that, the, nerdy part of public health that I just love. So we have two different ways that we do surveillance testing: saliva testing and nasal swab testing. With the nasal swab testing, those nasal swabs go off to LabCorp. They have their own quality assurance process at LabCorp, and then the results come back. For the saliva testing, I can give you many more details on what that quality assurance protocol is like. So first of all, with the saliva samples, if we get a positive off the saliva sample, we rerun it to confirm that it was positive. Secondly, we look at the cycle count, which is so the way that these are all PCR tests, and PCR is what you do is you look at the sample, you try to find the evidence of COVID-19, and then you amplify the DNA signal. That's one cycle, and then you look again. Then you amplify it another time, and you look again. You amplify it another time. So we do that 40 times in the saliva lab. So, and if after 40 amplifications it's not there, then we say they're negative. If we find it somewhere along the way, then we say it's positive. And we certainly, if you find it very early in the amplification process, so because we're looking at both the 0, 1 positive negative, but also the cycle count, that also provides us with information. We do, for a subset of the saliva samples, we also send them for nasal swab testing as well. It's one of the ways that we confirm the validity of our saliva lab, and those results have been indicate very high quality and performance of our saliva lab. So lots of different checks going on. Mike Frender, who is the faculty member who stood up that laboratory, he's a scientist and takes an enormous amount of pride in the validity of the data that his lab is generating.
Yeah, the scrutiny, Marilyn, of him and that whole team is just, it's impressive. And the university's lucky to have two different platforms, right? To have saliva and to also have a partnership with LabCorp, and for them to check each other and to be that kind of consistency and ensure that kind of consistency, we're very fortunate to have that relationship. It's really it's a great thing.
All right, great. Wow, yeah, it's really interesting to hear about all the different effort that's put into the testing process. Yeah, I didn't have any doubts in it, but hearing about it, I'm sure anybody who has any doubts is completely, comforted to hear that. So that's really great. All right, moving on to the next question. All right, we're actually ahead of schedule, which is very exciting. Okay, this one is a little long. Here we go. Can you describe the precautions taken to ensure lab courses are safe? I'm TAing this semester, and students are not able to physically distance during experiments. They are much closer than 6 feet, closer even than 3 feet, for at least an hour. Moreover, contact tracing in this scenario is much more difficult as they are not in their assigned here seats. Okay.
That was a long question, but it's a good question. That's a great question, Ryan. Something we've heard from the very start, and I would say this, Lynn and so many others, we were working on this back in July. I mean, the question was, how are you going to have labs? How are you going to have more active classrooms that aren't, where the students aren't just being static? I think there's a couple of things we've already said tonight and that are worth saying again. Number one is the fact that everybody is masked and properly masked throughout the class is paramount. We just see transmission goes way down when everyone is masked. So that's a given, right? And so that'd be one of the first questions the contact tracers would ask if they had a positive case. Were you masked? Was everybody around you masked? Et cetera. Number two is, I think, and we do know, we appreciate and understand the dynamic nature of a lab environment and how grad students and faculty members and undergrads have to interact. I think number two is when I hear that someone's next to a particular person for 3 feet or less for a whole hour, I wouldn't, in my mind, that's hard for me to envision. I could see being close to each other 3 feet for periods of time, but not for a sustained two people are next to each other for a whole hour at 3 feet. I think there would have to be more interaction and moving from that. Laura also mentioned a few minutes ago about sanitizing surfaces. So if there's shared equipment, if there's anything shared on the table in the lab equipment, certainly disinfecting the equipment, disinfecting your hands. So those, you can start to see all the different health and safety elements are going in. Masking, not being right next to someone for a consistent 60 minutes, but coming and going certainly, and sanitizing equipment, surfaces, and your hands are all part of the whole safety ecosystem, if you may, for labs. So I don't know, Marilyn, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll add one thing. So the other thing to remember is that in addition to surveillance testing, we have adaptive testing. And adaptive testing, we take a Bayesian approach where we feed all of the data from the previous few days into it and say who might be at highest risk. So if we know that people who are in laboratory classes tend to be physically a little bit closer to each other than if you're just sitting in a classroom, taking well, we hope that classes are engaged in active learning, but sitting in a classroom where you're in a spot and you're definitely 6 feet apart, right? So in this algorithm that spits out the adaptive testing, we take into consideration, well, what classes are the people in who were positive? Are any of them laboratory classes? Who else was in the laboratory section, et cetera? So if we think that there's elevated risk associated with people turning positive in a lab, that should get fed into the adaptive testing algorithm, and we'll go ahead and call people in for additional, so a second round of surveillance testing in a given week. So I know sometimes it's a little annoying that you only get notice 24 hours in advance that you need to come in for adaptive testing. But the reason that the notice is so short is that we're reacting in real time to the data, trying our hardest to, get a handle on the cases and transmission as quickly as possible.
All right, great. Wow. Okay. Bayesian techniques. Okay. Notre Dame is definitely being rigorous about its testing. That's really great. All right. Very cool. All right. We're going to move on here to the next question. Okay. Oh, a short one, thankfully. Okay, here we go. What are the university's plans about opening up travel for research? I am trying to go out of state over the summer, but was told that I may not be able to do so without a vaccine.
So I'll talk about that, and then maybe Mike can chip in if I miss out on some things. So everybody in leadership wants people to be able to travel for research. We understand the way that COVID has sort of held back the work, the aspirations around the questions that people are trying to answer. We're especially concerned about our graduate students and faculty who either need to use archives or are field scientists of one type or another. So we are working very hard toward making it possible for people to be able to travel. That being said, we're also trying to see how quickly the vaccine rollout occurs. Right now, it's going really well in Indiana. We're already down to everybody 50 and above, which is, if you look at other states, is kind of amazing that we've gotten there already. So our hope is that our graduate students will have all become eligible for the vaccine by the time summer rolls around. Even if that's not the case, there was, during the 10-week break, some people did travel for research. There was a research protocol associated with that. So we're working as hard as we can to make it possible for everybody to achieve with their research what they want to achieve. So. I'm pretty, I don't know if I don't know if it's just the sunshine this week that I'm personally responsible for, but you know, I'm feeling a lot of optimism these days. We've got a third vaccine approved. Indiana is doing really well on the vaccine rollout. The days are getting longer. The weather is getting warmer. You know, we seem to, our numbers are getting better. You know, we definitely had some high numbers 2 weeks ago. They got a little bit lower last week. They're doing better this week. That was, I know we had some significant off-campus events, but it's also true. Like I check in with about 40 different provosts every week, and every single one of them had a 3-week time period at the beginning of the term where they had a peak in cases and then it eventually came down, including places that were testing twice a week, one place that was testing 3 times a week, et cetera. So, you know, I'm hoping, I'm knocking on wood, and I think Mike and Laura are the same way, that, you know, that we're hoping that slowly but surely the case numbers are coming down, and will, you know, and that's making me optimistic too. I think there's, you know, and classes seem to be going well, and we've, you know, launched some interesting things, and, you know, I hope that people are feeling optimistic right now. I am.
Yeah, I think that's right, Marlon. It's a hopeful time. There's just a lot going, you know, a lot to look forward to. I'm excited about the semester, and I'm excited where we're going. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of diligence and a lot of commitment by all of us, but I like where we're heading. It's great.
All right, that's really great. I'm happy. I also have this positivity this past week. I don't know if it's the weather. I like the list of possible things. I think it's the sum of the parts. I don't know, but I do. I also feel the positive vibe. So I'm happy to hear I'm not alone. So that's great.
But Lynn, if you got the weather covered and you nailed it this week because it's a nice week, what's next week look like?
Oh, Shannon is in charge of the weather next week.
Okay.
So if you're not happy with the weather next week, it is Shannon Cullinan's fault.
I'm just checking. Okay. Duly noted.
Yeah. I would ask all of the graduate students to spread the word near and far that Shannon Cullinan is in charge of the weather next week.
We might have to do a town hall about the weather if it doesn't work out, but hopefully not. Fingers crossed. Okay. All right, let's see here. All right. Wow, we're actually on to the last question. I'm amazed. I think this is the first time I've been ahead of schedule in my graduate school career. So this is really exciting for me. All right. So last question here before we open it up. And it's a little bit long, so let's hold our breath. Okay. Does the administration have any guidelines for a return to virtual learning or students being sent home? Is there some threshold of average daily cases, average positivity rate, or some other metric that is going to trigger a shutdown? Is there a plan in place to return to all virtual teaching, like the 2 weeks pause we had last semester?
Okay, I'll take a cut at that. So when we meet on a regular basis, the leadership team meets on a regular basis. We look at all the numbers. Even when we're not meeting, I think that every member of the leadership team, like, you wake up in the morning, you roll over, and we go to the dashboard. That's the first thing that we all do, to take a look at the numbers. And, I know it might be comforting if there was, like, when this number is here, then this is going to happen. When this number is here, then this is what's going to happen. But the fact of the matter is, it's a really complex interplay, right? So if you want to look at the case numbers, you want to look at the positivity rate. I mean, case numbers could be really low, but if case numbers were really low, but we weren't doing that much testing, who has confidence in that, right? So it's, how much testing are you doing? How many positive cases are there? What's the positivity rate? Is the positivity rate going up or going down? What's the positivity rate in the county aside from Notre Dame? We're spending a lot of time talking about and thinking about, is there any evidence of the presence of variants in the state of Indiana, all those sorts of things. So it's really hard to say, definitively when you cross this point, then we'll flip to another stage. I think it is unlikely that we would, unless we started seeing evidence of transmission in the classroom, I think it is unlikely that we would go to a remote learning pause or whatever you want to call what we did in the fall. The reason for that being is, number one, we haven't seen evidence of transmission in the classroom. Number two, we think that, what we learned from the student experience survey, academic experience survey that we did in the fall, is that physically getting up and going to class and, seeing your classmates and seeing your professor is actually good for people's mental health. It's good for their academic performance and everything like that. So that's another reason why we would want to keep students going to class, for both academic progress and for mental health. And so we and at any point in time, if there was, such a severe breakout, and we looked at this really hard in the fall when we had that big peak in August. We have a responsibility to the South Bend community, and also to all the home communities that students would return to. So if we had some, crazy large breakout on campus, we would still have to think, we couldn't just say, well, send them all home. We have a responsibility to all the communities that those students would return to. And we have a significant number of students living off campus. We have a responsibility to keep testing them, while the semester is going and everything like that. So but again, right now the numbers are looking good, and people are going to be able to spend more time outdoors, which is good too. And, so I guess the answer is no to the question, but no, because it's more complicated than looking at, a simple, binary switch, flip it on or off. I don't know, Mike, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think it's science, and it's an inexact science. There's so many variables at play. And so you're constantly, Marilyn's right. You wake up, first thing you look at is the dashboard. You're only as good as the last day. And so we're literally taking the semester one day at a time, but I like where we're heading. But all those things come into play, and the amount of time and energy that so many people are spending to just make sure we're getting this right, or getting it as good as we can. You just feel really confident about it. You feel very blessed to be around so many people who care so greatly about the mission of the place, and all of you, all of our students, all of our faculty, all of our staff. It's pretty special.
And I'll just add, included in those people are graduate students who are, teaching classes and serving as TAs and serving as research assistants and working in laboratories. And, there's any number who are resident advisors in the residence halls and all of that. It's the graduate students are very much part of the team that's making this happen.
Well, thank you so much. All right. Thank you very much. I think that covers a lot of people to hear about how complicated it is to make decisions like that, and how you can't just have a binary yes, no. And thank you for the positive word for graduate students at the end. I appreciate that. I'm sure a lot of other people do too. So thank you very much. I see we do have some time here for any questions that someone in the audience might have. But I think before that, I'll just ask if there's any other kind of closing thoughts anybody wants to add to all of these questions before we transition to a live question format.
No, I guess I would just say, keep speaking up. If there's something on your mind or something you're not sure about, please reach out to any one of us and ask your question, and we'll get back to you.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Cool. I think it's been a success so far with all the question and answers back and forth. So thanks to everybody again for taking the time to clear this up, any kind of confusion graduate students might have. I'm happy to read any questions anybody might post in the chat if you're kind of uncomfortable with speaking, but you can also feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have any. but I'm seeing there are some questions in the chat. So I
So
think,
I can take the, I can comment on the two that are in the chat. I'm going to need Mike to help me out a little bit. We did send out that email saying that there were still slots available. I think we got a response from that. I don't know that there are now still slots available. Mike.
No, I think people answered when that email went out. There was such a good response. I think it filled up. So my indication is it's pretty tight now because so many people took advantage of that, which was good. I'm glad we sent that out.
And the testing for the COVID variant. So this is really interesting. It's a great time to delve in a little bit on public health regulations. So we LabCorp, the samples that we send to LabCorp is all places that are testing are required to send some random sample of their positive cases to the state laboratory in Indiana for genomic sequencing. And the state laboratory in Indiana is still getting set up to be able to do that genomic sequencing. So we're required to send some random sample. All places that are testing are required to send some random sample. So the Indiana State Department of Health does not yet have their genomic sequencing lab set up, and nothing in the public health world, you can't declare that the variant is present unless it's actually been genomically sequenced. So, you might have some indications, well, what's going on with transmission? There may be some preliminary testing you can do, but you cannot confirm the presence of a variant in the absence of genomic testing. So we will not be in a position to know whether or not we, in any definitive way, that we have variants on campus for another 3 to 4 weeks because of the timeline of the state laboratory. So Mike, did I?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, just a positive test, you don't know. It won't tell you in a variant on a positive test. You got to go through this genomic sequencing, which is, and I know the state health, when we talk with them, they're also plugged into the CDC. So you can see the CDC is doing this nationally, the state is doing it for Indiana. And so that's kind of the funnel to send all these random samples if you may have positive tests. So it's,
and then the other component of it is when samples get sent to the state laboratory, if they genomically sequence it and find out that it was, say there's a variant, they send that information back to the director of the health department. They don't send it to the doctor's office or, wherever that sent the sample. It gets sent to the state health department, and it gets sent to the state health department in a de-identified way. So when the state health department finds out about it, they will not necessarily, they won't know it was, Ryan Karl who got tested on February 18th in the nasal swab testing at the Notre Dame surveillance testing site, or he was, symptomatic, whatever. That they'll only, the county health director only learns that the variant is present in the county. So
thank you.
we can all wish that public health rules were different. We can agree or disagree with those rules, but those are the rules that we have to operate under.
I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I'm seeing a flurry of questions in the chat. So let me see here. I think I can just read the next one, or if anybody wants to just take it, that's perfectly fine. I think the next question here. Oh, do you want to just respond? Okay.
So the timeline for in-person events for student groups, I think we're looking at my recollection from our meeting this morning, Mike, was that we're watching the numbers carefully. We want
Yeah.
a few more days of numbers before we
Exactly.
make any changes.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I would expect that in the next week, we would look at it again, and then make some decisions of what's best. The numbers tell everything, right? So the numbers don't lie, and that's a great guidepost for us. So I think everybody, Laura, you were in that meeting, I believe, this morning as well, is we want to see a couple more of our days to see if we can sustain this trend of slow decreasing, and then open things up. Trust us, I can speak for Marilyn and Laura on this. There is nobody who wants to open things up more than all of us, but we don't want to go back. We don't want to go backwards and take a step, and put us in a precarious position. So we're eager to do it as well. And we're just literally looking at day by day, but I'm guessing within the next week, we'll be ready for another inflection point of where do we go from here.
So on Notre Dame being a vaccination site, so an important thing to remember about that is that that is going to be a public vaccination site. So there isn't, the slots for getting vaccinated there are available at, at the Compton Ice Arena, are available on the Indiana State Department of Health's website. And, anybody who's eligible can, sign up for one of those slots. So, and the State Department of Health and the County Health Department will be bringing people in. In terms of assisting eligible individuals getting to campus, certainly if they're, part of the Notre Dame community and this is coming up, let us know and we can try to figure something out. But the general, this is a state and county run vaccination site that we are lending our physical space to and lending some of our personnel to help out. But our personnel are going to be more like the, this way, please.
Exactly.
not the jabbing people and checking that you're actually eligible kind of thing. So maybe Mike knows more about this, but I assume that the county has, there are all these other sites out there also. So there's, Walmart and CVS and St. Hedwig's and all of that. And there are various mechanisms for people who have transportation problems for getting to those sites. But Mike, do you know more about that?
Yeah, and I know this, yeah, I do, thanks. I know the state's also looking at doing more mobile clinics within regions of areas, getting out more into neighborhoods and maybe even rural areas where it's, so they want to take the vaccination to the people, right? They just want to disseminate it in every way they can. So this mass vac site here, I think I know they wanted to tap into, we had some space, it was, and tap into, as Marilyn said, kind of our logistics and operations. Think of football weekends and things, how we can get high volumes of people through here and partner with them. So I expect them to be doing more than this. I'll be honest, I didn't think, what is today, March 3rd? I didn't think we would be at 50 years old, and above. I'm actually thinking Indiana's being pretty good in getting through this, and we just see all the different vaccines are just increasing. So our job, and I think the county and the state's job, is as the vaccine supply opens up in the coming weeks and months, do we have enough mechanisms? Do they have enough mechanisms to get it out to everybody who wants it? And so any way we can help with that for our Notre Dame community, for all of you, is what we really want to do, but also the surrounding community of which we are a part of. So as goes the health of one, goes the health of all. So anything we can do to help that, we will say yes to get there quicker and move onward. It's an exciting time.
Hey, Ryan, I can take the question about the restrictions and uncertainty, living with uncertainty.
Oh, perfect. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, life really does feel restricted right now, and uncertainty is one of the most difficult things to live with. So I understand the spirit of this question. I think one of the things that's helped me a lot is to focus on what I can control. So what are the things around which I can set goals that I can try and achieve? So the things that I can't control, I can fret about, but that's really not going to help me or change the situation. So there are a lot of tips and tools and strategies that might help you if you really are feeling stressed. So they range from a lot of great services that Grad Student Life offers, from McDonald Center for Student Wellbeing, the UCC. I've been using the Calm app. I know that that's not like helpful for all things, but when I wake up in the middle of the night, I put some and it really helps me. So figure out what is going to help you. But if you can focus on the things you can control, then you still feel like you're moving forward.
So can I add something, which is, I say this to, students in whatever, in whatever place I run into them and find myself in conversation with them. And actually, I feel this way with our faculty and staff also, which is, I'm really sorry. This is not what we would wish for any of you. I'm really sorry that all of you are having to deal with it. Everything is harder with COVID, and it's kind of, like going to the grocery store is harder, going to the pharmacy is harder, getting a doctor's appointment is harder, getting your food from Starbucks, getting a coffee from Starbucks is harder, all of those things. So I I'm just so sorry that all of you are going through that, and I want to acknowledge that sometimes the reason things seem hard is because they actually are really hard, and this is really hard. Then the second thing I would say is Laura's point about try to focus on things that you can control, but also the measure of who we are as a community is not so much when everything's going really well. The measure of who we are as a community is when things are really hard, and how do we respond, how do we take care of each other. So focus on things that you can control, focus on other people. What can you be doing to help other people? Do you have that capacity? And then the third thing that I would say is that Laura uses the Calm app, and I do mixed martial arts. I find that when I'm really frustrated, I just go home and I throw about 1,000 punches and I feel a lot better.
Wow. That's the first time I've heard that as a COVID de-stressor, but now I want to try it, so thank you.
It's pretty good.
Wow. All right. Well, I thank you to everyone for all of your advice about getting through and navigating COVID-19. I really like the idea that there's things you can control, and there's things that you aren't, and you can't. So you need to focus on the things that you can't control. I think that's good advice just for life, period. And that's something you can use after COVID's done. So thank you for all the positive, inspiring words. And I really think that we're coming together well as a community to navigate COVID-19 and all of its strangeness and all of its uncertainty. So I think that this town hall has done a number of things to increase graduate student positivity and trust in the process with navigating policy-making decisions among Notre Dame administrators. So I'm noticing we're kind of running out of time here, but I just want to say thank you again to all of the administrators that have made time out of their exceedingly busy schedules to come answer some of our questions as graduate students that we have about what to do during COVID-19. And I want to again say thank you, especially to Provost Miranda and Dean Carlson and Vice President Seamon. I think you're really kind of the best possible source for information about COVID-19 on campus. And I know it's probably really stressful for all of you to have to navigate what decision to make regarding policy. And I'm sure that that's an ongoing thing, but you still made time for us to answer our questions. And I think I speak for all the graduate students when I say, we're very grateful for you taking the time. And
so Ryan, if you'll allow me to just offer a closing remark, which is thanks to all of you for coming up with the questions, for, helping us to realize, oh, we need to pay attention to these things, be better communicators, get this out more clearly. Thanks for coming this evening. Thanks for organizing all of this. More, even more, thanks for everything that you're doing to make our classrooms and our laboratories and our research programs successful. We're really grateful. And the last thing I want to do is, give a special shout out to Laura Carlson. So if you ever have any doubts that, so in Laura Carlson, you have somebody who wakes up every day and thinks about graduate students on our campus and brings into every conversation, make sure that we're thinking about how this will impact the graduate students. So I so appreciate her hard work and advocacy. She makes Mike and I better at the stuff that we're supposed to be doing. So I hope everybody knows what a good advocate you have in Dean Carlson.
Thank you, Marilyn. It's all a team thing. We're all in this together.
All right. Is there any other kind of closing remarks anybody would like to make? President, Vice President Seamon or Dean Carlson?
Oh, thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
all of
Ryan.
you. Yeah, thank you for everything you're doing. Good to be with you.
All right. Well, I think with that, we'll conclude this town hall. But thank you to everybody for showing up and for answering our questions among the administrators. And I hope all of you stay healthy and safe. Thanks again.
All right. See you later, guys.
Be well, everyone.
Bye.